Michael, great to be back with you. How are things going in your world?
Good. Yeah, I'm glad we had a kind of a break here, just because there's been so much going on, I'm sure, with you as well as with us. So it actually has been a good sorting process since we talked last. So we're ready to refocus and pull it
Yeah,
forward to the future.
look, I agree with you. I was saying just before that, something about the end of 2022, there was a growing sense of pessimism, perhaps, in some discourse around educational change and where we're going. And I think, as we're recording here in May 2023, both of us are really energized by the work happening, by practitioners getting in and moving things forward, and by some really hopeful bright spots that are starting to emerge again. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, as we sit here in 2023, how are you starting to conceptualize, I suppose, where we've been, the year we're in, and I suppose the importance and possibility of this year?
Yeah, I see it, and I said this in the World Education Summit talk, that I see it as a kind of rebound year.
Nice.
That people really, some of them haven't bottomed out yet, but there's really serious stress and illness and all kinds of problems with it. But I'm going to say you can't keep humans down for very long.
Oh, I love
Uh,
that.
that they're bound to rebound. And
Mhm.
so that's how I see those indicators. And we can talk a little bit about young people too. Age, I usually think age 3 to 18, but young people are really part of this rebound. But so do teachers want the partnership with. When I did my 6 reasons for being optimistic in 2023, that op-ed, I said people have, one of the reasons that optimistic is that people recognize who their allies are. So who are the teachers' allies? The students, the parents, each other, other teachers. So they're getting that now, and I think there's not going to be so much wasted time on collaboration for the sake of collaboration. It's going to be more insistent on this better be grounded in how we can move forward.
Yeah, I love that. It brings back some of your long-term themes in the books I've read, that you've really always put that focus on collaboration, but also agency, and thinking about, who are your core allies? How do we actually get moving from where we are? But I love that you
Yeah.
can't keep humans down for long. So what's the work we've got to do this year, Michael? And how does this year, in your mind, sort of set up for potentially a new phase of thinking about educational change?
I think the work we have to do is, we have some of it underway, is cultivate or find actual examples of where the size is at least the size of a district,
Okay.
not one school at a time. And so we have that going in Ottawa Catholic District with 83 schools. We
Yep.
have that going in Anaheim Union High School District with has 26,000 students, 20 schools, high schools. So there's others like that, but these examples I'm talking about are really operationalized, and they've been in the game for even during the COVID, but
Mm.
because they've got the strength already, they are just really raring to going to town. We can't hold Anaheim back right now. They just want to go, and we're part
Yeah.
of it. So it's and I think when I look around with young people, they're apathetic about regular schooling. That good indicator is
Yep.
people saying, students saying, "Oh, saying to their parents, oh, I don't feel like going to school," and parents saying, well, it doesn't really matter if you do go to school so much, one more day won't matter. There's kind of
Mm.
a bad attitude, but it's
Yep.
because the experience is bad. That's why they're not going to settle for the old experience. And
Got it.
that's a good.
It's interesting what you say about some of those districts, those systems that you're partnering with and learning from, and how, in the last couple of months, they're just sort of, nothing's going to hold them back. I've been noticing that here in the Southern Hemisphere as well, in states like Victoria that you know well, and
Yeah.
the networks there. And I've been working over the last 3 years with those leaders of networks, each of them 25, 30 schools. And those networks were really becoming just sense-making networks, supportive networks during the crisis response. And a lot of the improvement work in some way stalled. But it's been
Yeah.
incredible the way this growth has come back in just the last 6 months, Michael. I was with a group of leaders on Wednesday, and we asked them to map just the communities of practice, the the volunteer active clusters of schools who are coming in around an area of learning and well-being they want to improve. And 105 of them have spawned across the state just this year. And it's almost that sense that there was all this latent potential that was being held down by so many of the crisis elements. And as soon as some of that pressure has been released, suddenly all this energy and enthusiasm to get on and work in new ways is being released. And I'm quite amazed, even in the state of systemic exhaustion that the profession is in, how they're finding new directions now to get moving on the real work.
Yeah, I think I hope you write it up soon or capture it soon, because that's exactly what I see, that people have been down, but there's kind of bubbling there without noticing so much, that people are also getting glimpses of how it could be different this time. And this is the go slow to go fast phenomenon.
Yes.
They have to go slow because people don't know the way to go, and there's all kinds of problems. But as soon as they get a taste of what fast looks like, you can't hold them back. And that's what I think. We want to see those examples and capture them and have them as spreadable.
Michael, one of the things you've said recently that's really captured my interest is that you've said the role of the local, the school level, and working in the middle through networks and regions and districts is to intrigue the top. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by this concept of our role now is to intrigue the top, and what does it mean, and why is it part of your growing view of the way that system change needs to happen in this next phase?
Yeah, well, part of it was the Principle 2.0 book kind of consolidated the fact that the local system was crucial. That is the students, the teachers, the principal, parents, community. And in that book, I've said the main role of the principal is to develop the internal system, as I've just described. It's not to implement the policies that are up there. They can be the more they implement the local system, the more they do take the best policies. But it really is clear that building the base, let's call it that way, is the central point to get going. And then we've talked about mobilizing the middle, and he's done a book on it now. We agree, but I want the base and the bottom, so to speak, to be part of that middle. So then it gets to the question. I didn't know what to do with the top. I guess I got so far, and it seems silly to rhyme out things they should do since they're never doing them. Like, why be theoretical about it this time? It's got to be like really grounded. And so it just occurred to me one day that this metaphor, it's kind of alluring, just literally, is you intrigue the top. And I think several people at the top now are, I think some of them are open to being intrigued because they know it doesn't work. And when they see something that works, they might as well try to take credit for it or to be part of it or whatever. So, but I want to leave it dangling. It's dangling on purpose. You haven't been able to do anything from the top. So the least you could do is look around to be intrigued by what's going on right under your noses. So do that. And if you're on the bottom or the middle, do give up on the top to a certain extent, but at the same breath, you say, how can I, it's a bit like, how can I be confident enough to be intriguable?
Oh, I love this.
Right?
Yes. So let's just be clear with definition. So when you're using the term top of the system in the hierarchical level, you're talking about policymakers, government senior leaders, ministers in some contexts, secretaries of education in other contexts. So that's that. Yeah. And I've heard you say recently, the way we change needs to change. And even one of our first conversations, you'd said, look, no one who's in the school role should ever think that people at the top know exactly what they're doing or how it all comes together. Yeah. And so you're saying, rather than getting frustrated by the fact that there's this constant changeover of people in those roles, change over the people in those advisory roles, shifts in government, shifts in minister, et cetera, rather than necessarily always having a kind of frustrated adversarial role with them, you're saying do great work and then package it and even language it in a way that is intriguing to that top, because they might actually come in and make what you're doing something that they want to support, or even, as you say, take credit for what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the other thing way of putting it is it's pretty complex to get it right now because
Yes.
the goals are more complex, the 6 C's or whatever you want to do. The problems are more complex. All of that just can't be orchestrated from the top. And it's understandable. So you start to get I'm going to say a degree of empathy for those at the top because they're trying to do something within a 3 or 4 year period. And it's impossible because it's the wrong definition of the solution. So, but the better definition of the solution is to start to identify where you could call them promising shoots that are coming up. But whatever you do, you can figure out then how to put pressure on the bottom and the middle by encouraging good work that's going on at the bottom and the middle.
Yes.
So it's not because you're so bright at the top, it's because you can recognize good things and that you start to pull it together that way. So I think in the meantime, it's perfectly good work to build up the quality of the bottom and the middle because it's going to be necessary anyway. So it's kind of a little bit of to me, a little bit of a who needs you anyways, looking at the top. I mean, I don't mean it to be that arrogant, but it's playful. It's playful. The stakes are high. And some of the good things that are happening are really movable, spreadable. And I think that when we get through 2023,
Yes.
we'll have both more energy because it's just will be better, but also because we'll have more momentum because we're seeing good things to happen. And I'm going to think there's going to be a real acceleration of this in 2024 and 2025. Continuous development.
I love this, Michael. It's kind of a coach game plan here for the rest of 2023, which is I appreciate your way of helping us take a perspective and a stance in some ways of some level of empathy where you say, well,
yeah,
how could anyone, often who's not a main level expert in education, come into a role for somewhere between 1 and 3 years, bring a range of advisors who also don't have deep experience in schools and systems, and somehow crack a strategy that involves not just the areas of literacy and numeracy and high school graduation that we've been tracking, also involves the capability development and competency development and well-being elements that you've put right at the center of the work.
Yeah.
How would anyone crack that in that time?
I know. Well, another way of putting it is they have been miscast. The role is not the role that they can effectively play in ultra complexity, which is where we are now. It's got to be thought about very differently.
So what can the local and the local edging into the middle do? Let's use that as a bit of a transition then to Principle 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the first book came out about 10 years ago or so, right, Michael?
2014, yeah, the principle, yeah.
And so you've been progressing and updating and thinking about some of this work, and you moved through quite quickly some really rich elements that are really at the core, at the epicenter of this book. And you're using this idea of no matter what's happening at the top, you're saying to us, the local needs to really focus on the internal system with teachers, students, parents, and then connect up into potentially district, network, region. Talk to me a little bit about what do you mean by internal system? What are you grappling with as you start to name this construct as we've got to develop the internal system?
Right. So it is a system. It is good. There are good systems and bad systems. So what are the criteria of good systems? They have focus.
Okay.
They have lots of participation where people are learning from each other. They have something specific that they're working on. They're close to the people are close to each other as they develop this. So the internal system is the system of local development, highly charged to be interactively focused.
Okay.
And that's what the local leader and teachers, including teachers and now recently students, they are, as a collectivity combination of bits and pieces of them, they are highly charged to get that local system coherent. And what I'm saying to them is, if you happen to be in a good district or a good network, take advantage of that, because that's bigger than one school. But more than that, think of what's going on at at the third level, which is the politicians and the policymakers. That there is actually good money coming from them these days, coming from the top. There are ideas that are not highly specified, which one could say is too bad, but I could say no, it leaves room for carving out some direct substance to it. So I think there's a really a kind of a seizing the opportunity to get concrete, and you're going to get concrete better at the local level than you can be at the macro level. And and then once you're concrete at the local level, you start to link it upwards in a way that, because I'm saying about the system, that people at the local level, they have a responsibility of realizing they're in a larger system that has a middle and a top. They need to think about how do we improve the whole thing. They need to think about how can I get to know the middle and the top better than I know them now? How can they get to know me? So it's not an isolation. I'm going off to do this. It's a solid piece that really tries to build outward, however it can, and it's exciting. And I have to say about young kids now, this with the new theme, I'm really excited about. And actually, one of my sons, Josh, who I haven't worked with, he's had a project or a system for about 8 years now called Maximum City, where he works with young kids. Nice. And in Anaheim, ours, you can see the kids, and the definition of the role of the students is twofold. One is develop yourself so you can make your way through a complex society.
Okay.
One of two. The second of two is to develop with others, including improving the community, so that the community has an opportunity to solve some of the really wicked problems like climate and like gross inequality. That's part of the agenda. So we see these students as change makers doing this twin role, and they will be able to, they love it fast. They love that twin role fast because it's a learning role, it's a social impact role. They know most of them are born now, are going to live to the next century. They have more stake in the future. And I love one of my colleagues, Brendan Spillane in Siwa, and when we did work with a Catholic organization in Perth, he had, and I use this phrase in nuance, he said, these kind of leaders are loyal, have a loyalty to the future. Nice. And I love that phrase. It's so vivid. And young kids have more of a loyalty to the future than older people, just almost by definition, but also by philosophy. They're really, they don't want to just learn for the sake of learning anymore. I mean, some do, but obviously, but not the academic obsession that we've had for the last 50 years. It's not the main point anymore. The main point is to learn the things that are going to be necessary for having an impact, both for yourself and for others, and team up and do that and make it better.
Michael, the one I love that example, and the unpacking of that work is, it really gets to what you've used the language of simplexity, is sort of getting right down to the core of a few things that matter. But it was interesting, as you were just sharing, I might be off on a tangent here, mate, but we're just talking before we got into this dialogue about young people. You started to talk about the role of the local at the school level being to build that internal system. And it's interesting, there's two elements that you said that organization focus in on for young people. That number one of building your own capacity to be able to make way in complexity.
Yeah.
Anyways, the analogous situation there is the principal working with their local people to internally, as a school, little community, as a little system, building their own internal capabilities to be able to, go forward through complexity. There's only more complexity coming. But also, what did you say? Young people also need to team up and learn to team up, because the problems you're tackling are too big for just an individual, resilient, creative person. And in some ways, there's an analogy there as well to what you were just talking about, which is the school. Once they've built enough of an internal system to get moving, then they need to reach out and connect up and out to be able to tackle some of the more significant, wicked educational problems that they're working on. And I just kind of really like this idea of, rather than expecting the big solutions to rain down upon us for us to implement, this sense of work with what you've got in front of you, build the capacity of that local system. Once you've got enough coherence internally, move out and start engaging with others. And that's sort of the way that we sense make our way forward. I'm not sure, maybe I'm jumping and forming connections, but there's something about that view of what we need to do for young people is almost, for me, analogous to what the principal is doing in their school. What are your thoughts?
I think that's right. And if you think of the principle, in the book, I have 8 vignettes of principles from 4 different countries. So these are 2,000 word vignettes that describe what this looks like. And if you accept the kind of passive definition of the principle, you end up trying to do things at the local level that the system wants you to do.
Yes.
So that's where your guidance is, because it's too complex to look at where there's not guidance. Even though the guidance is wrong, it's wrong because it's wrong. It's wrong because it's so superficial. But if you're, again, I've talked to a lot of teachers like this. They say, it's my word, but it's their concept. They say, if my principal is part of the hierarchy and trying to make us do things from the hierarchy, it's like the hierarchy from hell, because they're making us do things that are the wrong things and they're not good at it. So that and it's bad for the principal who does that role, because what could be worse than working with a bunch of tired people and trying to make them do something that's not the right thing to do. So those principles are actually screwed. They're in a bad role. Once they shift, and these are the principles in my book, the 8 of them. Once they shift to be the leader of the local system, the next level up starts to appreciate them for that role.
Got it.
Not try to get them to do what they're supposed to do, but to appreciate what they're doing that gets the impact. So I think there's a big blockage here, because we've got if you think of the pipeline is with bad ideas, and
going in the wrong direction. That's what I love about what you're saying. If we assume the top knows what they're doing and those ideas are coming down, and then the principal's job is to implement with fidelity those ideas, and the staff know these aren't necessarily good ideas or not adapted ideas for the context. The principal is sort of using language of, we have to do this, everyone. Come on, let's go through. The energetic system just, ends up grinding to a halt. As you said, the definition, the technical term, I think your technical term you used there was they're screwed. But then if you think of the other way, almost you're advising principals and the middle to just pause and say, give yourself a little bit of wriggle room, particularly in 2023, when the system's still trying to work itself out. Put the elbows out a little bit, create a bit of space, build the internal system, and then start to intrigue the top and demand what you need from the top. And I think it's a really, it's an empowering and practical way of positioning ourselves in the current landscape, for sure.
Yeah, there's one more, I think, important phenomenon that I want to nail right here. Is that we have had for a while 2 concepts that are identical, really. One is specificity without imposition, and the other one is kind of breakthroughs without precision without prescription. So precision without prescription. So the trouble with the ideas otherwise is they're not specific enough to work. If you say, oh, we want to collaborate to get this, if you look at any of those strategies, the North Star and that, they're very weak on the pathways to get there. They can point to the North Star. So what the building the local system does is it actually operationalize the tributaries and the pathways, and specific without imposition. And I've said it, once I said it somewhat arrogantly that it's voluntarily but inevitable.
Yeah.
Because it's inevitable, because it's the peers that are reinforcing each other to move in that direction. So that a good interactive culture inevitably gets to specificity, which most people can't resist because they don't want to resist it, because the group values it and it works because it's specific. So a lot of good things come together.
I like this, Michael. But you think about when you tell the top, the system, you need more specificity and precision. number one, they may not actually have the right problem definition, but when they get to the answer, then they get a specificity and precision that then they impose and prescribe, right? If the pipes are flowing in the wrong way, which then gets a reaction from the field that says, whoa, that's not a solution to our problems, or that's far too precise coming in. We don't have any adaptation capability here of what we need to do. The other option is to say, look, we want the internal system at the principal level and at the network, maybe the district level, to work hard at getting to specificity, making sure you're getting much more precise, but then it's not being imposed and it's not being prescribed. I use a different language, which is very probably, most of my ideas, I think, Michael, are just derivatives of yours. But one of the things that I often play with when I'm working with principals is, can you describe it? Like, can you describe at the local level? You're saying, I want evidence-informed practice in the year's mathematics classroom. Okay. I want high levels of collaboration that results in collective efficacy. It's like, okay, these are beautiful, compelling concepts. Where's the precision here? Can you describe with precision? And then they'll say to me, oh, but I wouldn't want to prescribe to the practitioners. And I sometimes say, look, even if you never show them this, can you work out as a team, do you even know what you want to see, or the sorts of things that the landscape of things you'd like to see if things were going well? And I think that push on specificity and precision, too often they have been paired by the system with imposition, evaluation, monitoring. Can we come and see that you're doing the things that I told you to do? And I think we need to grab hold again of what you're suggesting, which is we need to get precise, we need to get specific, but they don't always have to pair with imposition and prescription.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's ironic that people shy away from specificity, and the main reason is that they don't feel that they're part of working with it. And I think if you just put it specificity without imposition, people can understand that. If I'm a principal and I think of some things that some people are doing, that's great. I might endorse that degree of specificity, but I'm going to say in the same breath to anybody else, you don't have to do that.
Yes.
This is what it looks like, but you don't have to do it. And then it's ironic about change. The less you insist on something happening that happens to be good, the more likely it is to happen. So if something's good, the less you insist on, and something specific is good, the less you insist on it is the more it's more likely to happen. If you insist on it, it's more likely to be cluttered with the attitudes of resistance and interaction and miss the point altogether.
Michael, now I don't know whether you're giving me system change advice or parenting advice, but I think that advice works in both ways.
It actually applies to parenting as well, for sure. Yeah.
As you know, I've got a 5, 7, and 8-year-old at home, so any advice from you would be most appreciated. Look, Michael, I got to say, I'm seeing this in the wild right now. I give you one example. In Victoria, these networks that I've been seeing are just coming alive. And this incredible principal, small school, primary school principal, leading her network, said, well, okay, we want to do work in numeracy. And it's a great system down there. I really appreciate it. It is one of those systems that I would say the top do know what they're doing, but they still struggle with that idea of how do we get people moving, but without falling into a trap of imposition. And so in the network work, what it is this sense where, well, these leaders said, yeah, I know the system wants us to improve work in numeracy and mathematics instruction, but let's just start with us first. So in the network, they started getting the principals together, and she just asked a simple question, what else do you need to know in order to be able to lead mathematics improvement in your school? And people were able to share openly around, well, they didn't feel strong around having a clear instructional model. That's the precision bit. Or they didn't feel clear around what things should look like. It wasn't an area of strength for them. So in that safety of the network, they could actually put their hand up. And this connects to Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety. They can say, hey, I'm an expert and I'm not sure about this. Right? That's actually a marker of professionalism. They started working for 2 or 3 terms just as principals, started to activate their middle level leaders within their schools. And then they started to get such good work that guess what? The region started saying, hey, what are you guys doing down there? Because we can't get people to turn up to our sessions. We're trying to run sessions, imposing, not they're lovely people running it, but schools won't turn up. So then they said, well, actually, we've got all this energy, could we tell you what we need? And they said, yeah, we've got all this capacity, all these trainers. So then they actually were able to reach out and influence the area and the region. The region then starts to adjust what they're doing to deliver for the network. So the network is demanding. And now everyone else is looking in broadly and saying, well, this is really intriguing. And I've just literally heard that story in the last 2 weeks with one of the networks we've been working on. And it connected, Michael, to something that maybe we'll close off this chat on. And I want to just share with people and ask you to respond to what you've put forward as a potential solution to system change. And you've got 4 steps here. Let me just run them through and you can kind of speak to them. So the first one is attached entirely to the Principle 2.0 thesis, which is to build the internal system at the local level, school, community. And I saw that in this example. Then reach out and strengthen, you say, with lateral interactions across other schools and communities. Third, develop vertical relationships to government or the higher region, whatever that looks like in your jurisdiction, based on partnerships and mutual development. I've definitely seen that now happening in this network that's now connected. And then assess for progress based on precision, not prescription. You just want to close out by giving us a sense of, this is your growing hypothesis here for how we could move forward in system change.
Yeah, well, you've just captured it in a nutshell, and
it's your work, by the way. I'm just repeating back to you what I've read.
It's going to have strength and capacity to expand if the people leading that talk to each other and to people working exactly like that. In other words, they are describing, they're not just doing the strategy, they're quite conscious of this is what it looks like, this is what it is. So it's like, I think somehow we've missed that ability to say, we want to talk about how to make this work. And that's when that comes about and we're able to cultivate that, then it's understood, it's embraced by more. And additional people talk about it. They may not talk all the time precisely the same way, but that's an advantage because they start doing innovation around the edges. They say, well, what about this? What about that? It's a dynamic that is transparent, not imposed, built on trust, but the trust is backed up by transparency and explicitness. So it's not really a big chance, it's just big action. And I think that's the more that people can understand that, not me as a researcher, but the participants in it. And I'm thinking there's a huge opportunity to start asking students to articulate their theories of action in action. I don't have to use that language, but students saying, well, what would I do here? What would you do? What's working? How do we know it? And when we see it working, what are the attributes of it? I think students as analysts in that way, that it's natural for them to want to talk that way. They do it, and to identify, they can get excited about it. So I think I think the resource here, after we unleash the principle to build the local system, we need to unleash teachers and students.
I love it. And I would say maybe that is the core work of the internal system, isn't it? That we can really put that focus in support of the principle, help them focus on that core work of building the internal system. Then they unlock all this additional capacity from teachers, from students, and then principle to principle in networks and regions start to unlock capacity in each other.
Yep.
Michael, it's been so good catching up and sense making together, particularly of these first 4 or 5 months of the new year. Why don't we connect again soon and go a little bit deeper? I know you've been keeping up with your prolific nature in writing with multiple books on the horizon. And so we've started to pick up here on Principle 2.0. And if it's all right with you, I'd love to dive into your updated thinking on the drivers when we connect again soon.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. The page proofs are coming in about 10 days. I'll pass them on to you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Michael.
Super good.
Speak to you soon,
this is stimulating, and it's largely you getting opening this up in a good way. So I appreciate it.
All right. The feeling's mutual. Speak to you soon.
Yeah. Take care.